what led you to start a business in the UAE?
UAE is a nation of immigrants. UAE became a hub. 10.5 million people in this country. The local population of Emiratis, maybe about almost 1.5 million. Indian nationality is almost 3. Pakistan 1.2. British now I think 130. And even us Irish about 10,000. And so therefore it has the corporate trade routes also then become financial trade routes.
Today I'm joined by Kevin Kilty, who is the founder and CEO at Hubpay. With a very broad suite of products, digital wallets, multi-currency account, virtual IBANs, FX products, international payroll, crypto-enabled payments, and a lot more. Hubpay was also recognized on the Future 100 list of companies by the Ministry of Economy in UAE.
We built a really strong onboarding platform strengthened by AI. Right now with AI, there's a lot of people talking about the really complex kind of benefits. Just getting the basic stuff right is a game changer.
Where do you see UAE? I mean, is the banking infrastructure super strong? Is there space for like non-banking fintechs to make their own space and carve out a little niche of their own by digital wallets and all?
Yeah, so the way I would view it is...
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Finance Insider podcast. Today I'm joined by Kevin Kilty, who is the founder and CEO at Hubpay. Now, Hubpay is one of the most exciting fintech companies in the UAE. It was the first ever fintech startup which was issued with a digital money services license in the UAE, and since then they have grown leaps and bounds, solving global payments problem for companies as well as for individuals. The founder, Kevin Kilty, his career has started with investment banking in London, moved to microfinance across Africa, and now full-time to building Hubpay. With a very broad suite of products, digital wallets, multi-currency account, virtual IBANs, FX products, international payroll, crypto-enabled payments, and a lot more. More recently, Hubpay was also recognized on the Future 100 list of companies by the Ministry of Economy in UAE. So I'm very excited for this episode to unpack Kevin's journey with Hubpay as well as to discuss the future of money and payments with Kevin. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Kevin Kilty. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sam. Great to be here.
Thanks for taking out time. So Kevin, my classic start with any guest over here is to talk about their early days, influences, whatever led them to doing what they're doing today.
Sure. Well, first of all, great to be with you. Thanks very much for the time. In terms of background, I grew up in the UK. Was born in Ireland, but I grew up in the UK, and kind of after university went straight into banking. But in terms of an early influence, one of the books I read at university was Muhammad Yunus's Banker to the Poor. Professor Muhammad Yunus is now interim prime minister in Bangladesh, but the most famous for his Nobel Peace Prize success in 2006 for all the work he did around microfinance. He founded Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, a bank to finance the poorer communities in Bangladesh, focusing on creating a product around lending circles where individual users would need to have assets to secure a loan from a bank. And his target market was predominantly women in that country. And so he created lending circles under a structure you'd call kind of joint and several, which was a unique kind of proposition at that kind of time. What it did was it opened up a huge market in Bangladesh, empowered the largest kind of lower income community of that country, and brought millions, if not tens of millions, out of poverty. It also kick-started the microfinance approach globally, which was done both in NGOs and also in the private sector. What I was very interested there was the fact you could, whether you call it social impact investment or double bottom return, where you're looking at both a financial return, but also a return that is going to have a significant impact on a community and on a country. And then reading around that kind of work, reading about microfinance, I started in my spare time volunteering in microfinance in my 20s, doing quite a bit of work with Opportunity International, one of the largest microfinance NGOs. But my day-to-day work was banking, which gave me a pretty good foundation and skill set for that. And so that was through my 20s, and I was keen to go and do something else. I thought it was going to be on the investment side. And so I moved to Dubai in 2016 without a job, looking, after doing 10 years in banking, looking to see if I could use Dubai as a really kind of landing base to explore jobs in emerging markets around the country. I'd spent time on the ground in Malawi, Palestine, Myanmar, Libya, and I was looking to join either an investment fund or a private equity fund investing in those kind of countries. those jobs are few and far between, right? They're normally stuff like UN Development Partners, Gates Foundation, etc. And then whilst I was in UAE, I heard they were bringing out an EMI license, which you referenced in your introduction, and thought, well, rather than investing in a business that was looking to target that community and that target market, maybe I'll see if I can try and build one instead.
Very interesting. Kevin, you mentioned about microfinance, and while banks exist everywhere, but guess what? I mean, as they say, fintechs can go where banks cannot go. I mean, there's no dearth of capital, right? Capital can be given out by banks, but they can't have that amount of reach which a microfinance bank would have otherwise, or a microfinance lending institution would have.
Sure.
I don't know if you have heard something similar in Pakistan. There was this Ahuat program, which has something similar, but it has also basically brought up a lot of sort of people who were below the poverty line, or people who were not very good in the social class, up by giving them those microfinance loans and having a very sort of cooperative kind of repayment based on the businesses that they've run. Have you heard about the Ahuat program?
Yeah, I've had the privilege to meet the founder of Hubpay, Dr. Amjad.
Okay.
I've met him here in Dubai, and I've also met him and his team in Karachi.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's another big reason we decided to go and get the EMI in Pakistan. So currently Hubpay is the only fintech to have both an EMI license in UAE and also Pakistan. We haven't launched in Pakistan yet, although we have a full EMI for both retail and corporate. But we're hoping this will be our year. Especially because there is a major shift in the landscape in Pakistan. It looks like they're about to legalize cryptocurrency, which I know we'll come on and talk about stablecoin and crypto today. But I feel now there is a seismic shift in finance. I think the biggest beneficiaries of that shift will be in emerging markets, and will be countries like Pakistan. And by extension, the fact that UAE is a gateway economy will also link in. But yes, Ahuat and the work Dr. Amjad has done, not just in microfinance, but also his wider work around financial education, funding schools right through there, and also social inclusion. Yeah, he's one of the most inspiring people I've ever met.
Perfect. So, Kevin, a quick question before we move on to core of this discussion. So, the work that you've done was around emerging markets. A lot of microfinance work around the countries that you mentioned, the Malawis, the Palestines, influenced from stories in Bangladesh. What led you to start a business in the UAE, while most of your inspiration came from those emerging markets, which might have a different thread to what UAE has?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it, Asad, a different thread. The difference of the UAE is UAE is a nation of immigrants, right? The story of the UAE was obviously significant gas wealth in the Abu Dhabi Emirate, but then in the Dubai Emirate was them building an airport earlier on before nobody else did, right? And then from that airport, which is now the biggest in the world, they built out other infrastructure, the Jebel Ali seaport, which is the biggest in the region, bigger than any seaport in Europe by traffic, top 10 globally. They built further foundations on that, and what that created was UAE became a hub, right? So we've got, 10.5 million people in this country. The local population of Emiratis, maybe almost 1.5 million, but Indian nationality is almost 3, Pakistan 1.2, Bangladeshi 800,000, right? British now I think 130, 140,000, growing quite quickly, and even us Irish about 10,000. So what the UAE's created was, by creating this kind of trading hub, by creating this, then that developed into a corporate hub, it brought in everyone from all over the world, but a significant number from emerging markets. And so therefore it has the corporate trade routes also then become financial trade routes. So much like we would see in the Silk Road back in the day, which was the kind of early start of commerce, you go and put the largest seaport in the region, the largest airport in the world, you will need to have the financial flows will mirror those kind of trade activities, which is why the UAE is the largest remittance country per capita globally. By a total sum, it's third globally. Corporate flows are significant by national standards, but it punches well above its weight. So what you've created here is this huge kind of melting pot of everybody's coming together. I think one of the references Sheikh Maktoum once said was he compared it to Cordoba. Well, Cordoba which is now a small town by these days, but was big in its era, was a Spanish trading town south of Spain, but huge in the Roman Empire and then the later empires of the Moors and other kind of dynasties. But what it was a place where all the kind of religions and all the kind of people kind of came together, and was responsible for a huge rise in kind of living standards in those regions because it drove commerce. And so the reason why fintech works starting here is the UAE is this melting pot, and in my view, is the kind of gateway to the emerging world.
Super. Let's move on to we started with mentioning that Hubpay was the first ever fintech startup which was issued with a EMI license, the UAE. So start with the very basics. What exactly is it? What does an EMI license enable you to do? What is a digital wallet for somebody who doesn't understand this? And then we take the conversation through.
Sure. So EMI, electronic money institution, also referred to in the regulatory space as MSP, money service business, is typically a regulated firm that's doing payments in some form or the other, often cross-border. It's often how it started. They really begun in countries such as Singapore and the United Kingdom, were some of the biggest ones early on. The reg framework that the FCA put together in the UK and the Money Authority of Singapore in Singapore created a very clear framework where smaller companies could start with smaller amounts of capital and do a more restricted number of regulated activities. Mm-hmm. So rather than becoming a full deposit-taking Category 1 institution like a bank where you take in deposits and you lend those deposits out to you and I, whether it's a loan, whether it's a mortgage, it could go, well, I don't need to know all that. I just want to solve one problem, or I want to do one product. Yeah. And so a very famous one would have been TransferWise. TransferWise started a good, probably 15 years ago now, maybe slightly earlier than that, and said, very simply, we want to make sending money cross-border easier. Mm-hmm. And so they don't need a full licensing framework, and so the EMI was created. The real success story in that space came really after the global financial crisis, and in regions such as the European Union, the framework was, okay, we want to create this stuff because we want to create more competitiveness and we also want to drive innovation. And that's when you saw a huge surge across these EMIs across the whole space, right? From payment acquirers like checkout.com to microinsurance and to cross-border payments like us.
Correct. So you focused a lot on the cross-border space, which is true for a country which has a lot of remittance, etc. But generally, a digital wallet would enable you to store value digitally and then to spend it as you like. Could be on bill payment, it could be on P2P transfers, cross-border transfers, right? It gives you the whole suite, does it?
Sure.
Okay, cool. And okay, so the reason why I asked this is because in the UAE, again, I also work for a payments company which is primarily operating across Africa. Yeah. You know, Africa, I mean, we like to call it Africa, assuming it's a country, but it's a combination of 52 plus countries and every country is different. So the story I'm trying to tell you is basically to ask a question, which is if you go across Africa, every country is so unique. You go to Kenya, 90% plus payments are made through one payment method, which is the M-Pesa, which is a Safaricom wallet-based payments, basically. Sure. The telco provider, which has this massive coverage over the entire population. When you go to Nigeria, for example, in Nigeria, if you see, there isn't one payment method. There is a whole range of fintechs, and the fintechs have come up because the banks weren't as strong.
Yeah.
So there are other countries, for example, like UAE, for example, where the banking network is pretty strong. Everybody has some sort of bank account or some sort of relationship with the banking. So what I'm trying to get to is, in all these different nuances across different countries, where do you see UAE? I mean, is the banking infrastructure super strong? Is there space for like non-banking fintechs to make their own space and carve out a little niche of their own by digital wallets and all?
Yeah, so the way I would view it is, in the countries you mentioned, like in Nigeria and Kenya, you had a significant unbanked population.
Yes.
We referenced Pakistan earlier, and that would be comparable. If you look at, say, Nigeria and Pakistan, quite a few parallels, even though they're on different continents, right?
Yes.
GDP per capita on a purchasing power parity basis is similar. There's challenges from a security, ethno-religious issues, resource rich. And then a significant percentage of the population in poverty and significant financially excluded. So there's a very clear use case there around financial inclusion, digital wallets. The success story, if we look at like an Alipay in China, right? That was a real big one where there was a major gap with financial exclusion, and they addressed that. In the UAE, do I think there's a gap in the market? Absolutely. I think the gap in the market is slightly different. I think if you look at the UAE, we have quite a stratified economy in terms of wealth, right? So you and I come here, and let's just compare it right now. There was a meme going around, and this is the volume in this has certainly increased recently, comparing living standards in the UK to the UAE. And if you're middle class in the UAE versus your middle class in the UK, you have significant more disposable income in the UAE, and life is easier, right? The UK is going through challenging times, and there's a number of factors around that. So if you and I come here, if other nationalities within that kind of space, we're pretty well banked, right? You've got Emirates MBD, who I use, they're good, right? They've got credit cards, they've got good facilities, etc. Could my transfers be a bit better? Sure, but they're a good bank, right? In the lower income segment, I think there's a significant gap there. I think we have not seen a low-cost digital wallet deal with the blue-collar market well. We just haven't, right? That's predominantly regulatory issues around that. What can you do in that space, or how can you address the WPS market? So I think that is one area that is a gap in the market. I think a far larger gap in the market is fintechs in the B2B space. Okay. And I think that hits a number of silos. One, we saw a very successful raise from expense management platforms recently, Hubpay, right? Credit where credit's due. I know Pay's product pretty well because we use it. It's a good product. They're a very good fintech, right? So there's one alone. I think if you look across the different verticals within B2B, which is everyone focuses on retail because it's what we see every day, but the B2B market, there's a significant gaps. Yeah, and there's sorry to interrupt, there is emerging gaps coming out, and that is partly because of the stablecoin revolution that's beginning to take off.
Totally. We'll dive into that as well. I'd like to unpack a little bit more around the B2B space, because as you rightly said, what's in front of our eyes is basically the retail space, and you see, all those digital wallets and use cases. What exactly is the gap that you're noticing in the B2B space? I mean, is there a problem in one business transferring money to another business? I mean, is the banking rails not good enough, or what else?
So what we addressed initially was much like on the retail side. We saw a simple solution of we can provide a decent platform, low cost rates, fast execution, solid execution. We deal with problems, let's say, if a payment gets queried by another bank, right? Which happens far more on the corporate side than the retail side, right? Payments are larger, payments are more complex, right? We brought out that platform in Hubpay about 2.5 years ago. During that time, the UAE was on the FAT for grey list. And for those who don't know it, the grey list is kind of the naughty boy list. Very simply, there was concerns around money laundering in the country. It's happened at numerous places over the time. And the UAE dealt with it. When that was going on, that was more challenging, but that does create challenges within the B2B space, and that thing can make transactions more complicated. Correct. I think very simply, we brought out the best cross-border payment platform for B2Bs in the UAE. And so, yes, there are banks, but the payments weren't always the fastest, and they were expensive. And so there was a gap there. So that was the first problem we addressed. I think we addressed it well when we launched. I think we're addressing it even better now.
Yeah, I think some of the real-time payment rails that they've recently started have come on really good, right? So the Anis of the world. I know there's a limit on the amount, but I've noticed myself, 5-6 years ago when I used to make a salary transfer to the employees, it would reflect post the weekend and all of that. Sure. Now, it's just insane.
Yeah, it depends. What you're seeing now in the B2B space is you see different rail systems. Yes. So the predominant rail system that we've had since the kind of 60s has been the SWIFT network. Yes. The SWIFT network is very reliable, right? But it can be a little slower. Yeah. Often that's not the SWIFT system per se. That's the number of banks that are in the flows, depending on the bank architecture, right? If you look at a bank, and when I used to work at RBS, which was the largest bank in the world in 2007 when I joined it on the grad scheme, I think 1.4 trillion in assets. It had just taken over ABN AMRO, the largest investment bank at the time in Europe. When I left, it was nationalized in 2009 in the fallout of the global financial crisis. And one of the things that was going on as part of the nationalization was trying to sort out all the systems because there was issues around reporting internally. in that bank alone, there was something like 430 different banking systems. So, because what happens is the bank was founded in, I think, 1775 or something, and that kind of range, like a lot of UK financial institutions were. And over time, it acquired banks and brought out new systems, and you have layers and layers of systems on top of that, right? So we talked about retail payments earlier on. Retail is a lot more simple. When you start earning into a full system for a business, where it's payments or loans or anything else, you have a multitude of payment systems. And so what you end up is, you use it here, a phrase called the legacy IT and the legacy IT estate. That relates to the age of some of the systems, but also how they're layered as a patchwork effect on top. That is where a fintech can be way more nimble, right? And so I know in Santander and their digital bank, they wound down their existing bank completely and are building a new bank from scratch because it was easier to do it that way. Wow. Think about about making a new house, and you've just got 1,000 different extensions on the house, and go, do you know what? Let's bulldoze this and make a new block from scratch. That's the comparison.
No, indeed. And then, so you said something earlier about the similarities between Nigeria and Pakistan. I was just thinking about it after your comment over there. It's actually quite true, because the amount of unbanked population we have in both of those markets, specifically, I mean, I'm talking about Pakistan right now, you see the emergence of all these Jazz Cash of the world, the Telenor, Easy Pesa. If we go back to Nigeria, the different digital wallets, OPay, PalmPay, this and that. So everybody wants to use a wallet versus going to their classic banking app. So what I want to do with you is let's you and I create a visual pie chart for UAE, right? Trying to figure out, okay, how much of the payments pie is bank transfers, card payments, wallets, etc. And we can do that from a retail perspective. I think that's because that gives you sort of a broader volume size, a broader sample size, or a population. Yeah. So, I mean, in the UAE payment space, what do you see as the most prevalent payment method?
So I think if you separate it from retail to corporate, on the retail side, banks and exchange houses would still have a significant piece. If you look at like the big exchange houses like Al Ansari, Al Fadan, they would have a significant portion. They've got decent apps. They've got a big branch network. There's still physical cash in the system. I would need to check precise numbers, so I don't want to misquote the numbers, but they would have a decent chunk. The banks would still have by far the majority, and then I would say on the retail side, we're a small fish in the retail space. That's not our main focus. Our main focus is corporate. The three ones that would stand out to me would be Kareem, and probably Botim, because Botim's got some of the lending capacity as well. Now, also all three are kind of quasi-state owned. Right.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
A bit like, the most successful corporates, B2B fintech, would be WeoBank, state-owned.
Yeah.
When you look at it, they might say, "Oh, it's owned by ADQ." Well, yes, but ADQ.
So what I hear.
So I still think banks, to answer your question, banks would still be the majority, and the retail side, there's some decent emergence on the wallet space. On the corporate side, no, almost. I'd say 95% banks. Yeah, I would say 95% banks right now. You've got fintechs like eBay and those ones in there, but they're scratching the surface.
So what I hear is, Kevin, digital, online payments. You go to Africa, for example, people still queue up in stores to pay their bills, and cash, which is in-person payment as we call it. You go to South Africa, you'll find people queuing up in ShopRite, Pick n Pay, whatever are their stores basically, to pay their bills. And that's the most prevalent payment method. Yep. People still want to touch the metal where they pay their money. More than, if I'm not mistaken here, around 70% of the payments are still in-person payments. And then there's something called the debit orders, which is the direct debits from the accounts. And a very small fraction is card payments, other online payments. A very different kind of fabric to for example, the likes of UAE, for instance. I wonder if that's because of the amount of people who have access to some sort of digital card or some sort of access to a bank over here, or is there something else?
Well, I think if you're comparing an emerging market, so let's say sub-Saharan Africa, from a Nigeria to a Kenya to the UAE, it would be incomparable to everybody who would have financial access on some level. So the lowest income blue collar worker here would still be given a salary card, etc. Right? That would not be the case in a Nigeria or Pakistan or someplace, right? So that's different. And again, it's an immigrant nation, right? So so it's a very different comparable makeup. You do not have any anyone who is living in extreme poverty.
100%.
There is no homelessness in the UAE because everyone here, if the local population, they're generally quite wealthy and quite successful. If it's immigrant, you have to have a job,
100%.
or you have to be in business. So that eliminates the difference. What I would say you're seeing, if you bring it onto the corporate side, is the innovation you're seeing. So whilst you have a significant level of population unbanked, which you don't have in the UAE, everyone's got some form of access. You're not probably seeing the same innovation as you've seen, because if you make it tougher in another country, like let's say Kenya, it will drive innovation, right? Sure. And so you mentioned Nigeria, you've got Flutterwave, you've got about 10 or 20 that are ranging from 100 million north into the billions.
Yes.
And a multi-billion-dollar valuation fintech in a country like Nigeria is huge, because you don't have the same level of wealth, right? 100%. Right. Your average, the number of transactions you have to process to get to $1 billion valuation in Nigeria versus becoming a unicorn in the United Kingdom is exponentially more. So that's the comparison I would make.
No, indeed, you're right. I mean, let's talk about Pakistan. I come from Pakistan, close to my heart, of course. So the most common use cases, people still to date get paid in cash. And the most common thing that I saw, I was standing at a very normal kiosk over there, which was an agency bank, for example. Also, a guy came, he said, please deposit 10,000 rupees into my Jazz Cash account. He was saying, I need to transfer it to my village, to my family, because he can off-ramp it over there. Some people deposit cash to pay their whatever electricity bills, etc. So people are sort of shoving cash into this digital world to then pay for whatever bills, transfers, and all of that. So speaking of Pakistan, it's how did Pakistan come into your roadmap in terms of licensing? What how does it basically help the Hubpay's journey overall?
So the vision we had initially, and this vision we still stick to, but one we are frankly not executing right now, was starting with a retail cross-border wallet. You drive that into a payroll wallet. That was the plan. And so we mentioned here blue-collar workers, and if you look at, let's say, the WPS system, yes, everyone gets access to a salary card, but there isn't a wider digital wallet to access there. And so my view is, if you created someone's salary straight into a full digital wallet with all the 5 or 6 things they need, so yes, remittance, yes, a decent card, yes, bill payment, but other stuff, salary advance, which has been seen to enormous success in other kind of markets and provide some level of stability, and then also health insurance. That was the idea in the UAE.
Nice.
If the reason, and this comes back to your initial question of kind of why the UAE when you're looking at emerging market, because the UAE offers such an incredible test pilot. If I launched a solution here for blue-collar workers, what would my makeup of blue-collar workers be? Well, it'd be a significant portion Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Egyptian, Sri Lankan. Well, now you're seeing what's worked with those communities. And so therefore you could replicate the same thing in Pakistan. In Pakistan, there's a few differences. You have a far wider blue-collar population. The total population here is about 10.5 million. In Pakistan, it's approaching 250 million. And it's rapidly growing. And you have about 70% or so unbanked. So if you could create it here and it worked well, you could then use the principles, the tech, the operational playbook, the route to market, and then launch the same in Pakistan. And then potentially become what you saw in Alipay did so well in China, which was a mass wallet for the market, which no one's done yet.
Interesting. Moving on from here, if you were to talk about some of the corporate or B2B solutions that you have, I saw on your website, I mean, multi-currency accounts is a product that you're really proud of. It's properly advertised over there. So tell me a little bit about the two things. One is virtual IBANs, and the other is multi-currency accounts. What is the use case of each? Is there an interlinkage between the two? Why would a business use either of those which are provided by you?
So we started initially on focusing on one pain point. The initial pain point was, you do a business here, you need to make international payments. Just like a TransferWise proposition, we're going to make it lower cost, we're going to make it more efficient.
Okay.
The second pain point we dealt with is, you move to the UAE and you want to start a business. And so you go to DMCC, JAFSA, you can get a business in a week, maybe even a day or two, right? It's efficient, it's well structured, you're good to go. Then you need a bank account. But the bank account might take 3 months, right? Now, do you need a full bank account, or do you need a named IBAN so you have a named account for your business, and the ability to do local and international payments? Well, actually, for most people, that's what you'd need. So that's why we started a starter account. The next book was, okay, well, let's say a business is slightly growing, and I do need a named dirham account, but do you know what? I also need a multi-currency account, because if I'm, let's say, running a building supplies business and I'm importing from Europe or South Africa, I'd want to hold currencies in different, in euros or in South African rand. Well then, okay, so we address that pain point, and that is, 95% of goods in the UAE are imported, right? So there's a huge need for multi-currencies. So we created the scale account. And then let's say you set up a marketing company here and you've got 20 employees all over the world, from Portugal to the Philippines. Well, I want to do a B2C payroll payout. So we created a payroll solution. We addressed that. And so we effectively went round the wheel of kind of problems and created a platform where you could go onto our website, and in 24 hours, you can have, whether it's a starter, a scale, or what we call a treasury account for large businesses. And that covers a full suite of services. And then the latest solution of that then was stablecoin.
Perfect. Coming to stablecoins in a bit. And prior to that, so you mentioned, I actually read it, one of the feedbacks on your website, a testimonial was from a customer who said that I was able to set up my virtual IBAN with Hubpay in like 24 hours or so, which is phenomenal. How do you manage the KYC for businesses? I mean, as you rightly said, banks would take months, probably 3 months, and you take 24 hours. What's the...
So there's two methodologies done with that. We built a really strong onboarding platform, and that's been strengthened by AI, right? So right now with AI, there's a lot of people talking about the really complex kind of benefits, real complex problems it can solve. Just getting the basic stuff right is a game changer. So I'll give you an example. We onboard a medium-sized business. So a smaller business, there'll be a number of forms. Medium-sized business, there might be a few more questions, etc. we've got. And so somebody needs to upload 10, 15 kind of forms, right? Normally what would happen is you'd upload those forms would be transferred across, they go into a queue, and then one of your team on your onboarding or risk team would go through each form, only to find that the first 3 forms were incorrect. One was a bar napkin, right? One was empty, one with the date was out of date, etc. And you go back and forth. That's what slows it down. So when onboarding times are slow, it's not always the fault of the financial institution. It's often the fault of the user. And so when I say it's 24 hours if it's correct. If I have to come back and ask you because you haven't updated the forms, no, but that's on the customer. What is astonishing, and it sounds simple, but it has a huge impact, is if we looked at 12 months ago, the AI on optical character recognition and recognizing form was correct, was fairly accurate, but not 100% proof. Now it's 100%, right? And we've tried it, and so we ran a test case for 3 months, and we just kept on loading loads of forms in different languages, in different fonts, handwritten, poor text, poor quality, etc. And every time it got right. We still have manual oversight to make sure it is. But once you had that, what we could do was all the forms are uploaded, and then AI engines checking they're correct or not. So when it goes through to the risk team to actually do the KYB, all that mistaken, all that error, all those gaps, that's already gone. Wonderful. Right? And so that starts making it rapidly. And then as part of that, you've got an AI bot giving feedback saying, hey, that form is out of date. Do you want to do that? Awesome. We've got it down to 24 hours pretty consistently. I think we've got it down now as 4 hours is one of the fastest ones done. It'll be down to near instant by the end of the year.
Wow. Interesting. So what basically I unpacked in this is that you have tried to optimize for the onboarding times by basically accelerating through the technology that you have implemented behind that, right? So that's the gap between 24 hours to, let's say, a month or a couple of months, right? Because when you said that a business who was recently set up in the UAE, for example, what they would want to do is just to make payments, receive payments, that any business would anyway want to do with the banking account as well, right? I'm not going for credit, you're giving me the same service that I would otherwise have gotten through a normal bank. Yeah. But basically you have optimized for the onboarding time period through the AI and everything else that you have implemented behind that.
That's exactly it. I mean, what the UAE has done exceptionally well is we talked about some of the hard infrastructure they've developed here.
Yes.
Well, they've also done on the corporate infrastructure, right? You go and set up a business in a lot of the free zones, it's under English common law. And that's because a lot of businesses like it, they get it, etc. Right? So you show up here in the UAE, you literally come off the plane, you go to a free zone, wherever it may be. We're in, go to, let's say, a DMCC or a Dubai World Trade Center. You go and get an office in a WeWork. You are ready to go with world-class facilities few cities would have within a few days. All we're trying to do is make it easier as businesses to get trading. Because what you are seeing when we've spoken to all the free zones, and we've spoken to pretty much every major free zone here, is one of their problems is they see lapse in licenses. People get licensed, struggle with a bank account, this is taking too long, can't get things going. And so they unincorporate the business or they liquidate it. What a missed opportunity, right? And so if you can solve that pain point with let's get live, let's get the account going, make sure you got multi-currency, make sure that your payments are effective. How many more incredible businesses are going to start in the UAE, amazing, right? And so I think we're working well, and we've really seen a step surge in terms of number of onboardings off the back of that.
Fantastic. I mean, this stat that we keep on seeing, the UAE being at a 20th in the ease of setting up business or whatever. I think you guys and companies like you are contributing to that. While they can get all their license and everything, they get stuck in the bank account opening, which then you and other companies like you solve for. So that's phenomenal. If it's not confidential, would you like to share how many virtual IBANs would you have?
Yeah, I can give you a rough number. It's probably heading towards, I need to check the numbers this week, it's probably heading towards 600.
Wow. Okay.
So here's the major difference. At the start of the year, we were focusing large to mid businesses.
Sure.
We were onboarding about 20 businesses a month. In May, we went live with a starter and scale account, so small and medium-sized businesses. But also our existing businesses who didn't have named accounts before have now got a full suite of multi-currency. And our onboardings went from 20 up to 67.
Sure.
And then last month, they went north of 100.
Wonderful.
So we reckon by the end of the year, we'll probably be doing 200 businesses a month in terms of onboarding. By the end of 26 next year, I'd like that to be in the thousands.
And how does your onboarding look like? It's organic onboarding onto your platform directly, manual?
Go straight to wearehubpay.com.
Fabulous.
Go to our website, upload it. We've got a multi-language call center that can assist you. There's guides all the way through. The feedback's pretty consistent. But and this I think comes back to the conversation we were talking about early on. If you, let's say, are a large international bank, and the customer's going, that point on the platform was difficult, it's changing. That feedback will be fed to a product team, it'll go into an engineering team. That process might be 12 months.
Yes.
We run 1 week engineering sprints. We get stuff at the end of the week, it gets put into the pipeline, next week the fix will be there. Every week, 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the entire team is sitting there going, this is what's going live in product this week. And so within that, there might be an epic. So for example, we are doing a major upgrade on some of our payment operations over the last couple of months. But one of the things, we did a couple of months ago was get stablecoin live, right? And so that was about 6 weeks work. So that will be running on the background. But every week there might be 10 fixes. But a lot of it is a feature. Sure. Somebody said they wanted a button here. Someone said they wanted an automated report, etc. And so that kind of feedback system, that rapid iteration, allows a much responsive platform. And that's where you see hypergrowth in tech businesses, whether they're fintech or else otherwise.
100%. If there's one thing, Kevin, that we cannot ignore about UAE is the real estate. In fact, real estate and Dubai are sometimes spoken as synonymously, right? So in the real estate sector, it has its own nuances, high value transaction. A lot of them are cross-border. I also noted and I read that you are solving for some of those pain points in the real estate sector. What are some of those things that you'd like to share with us around that?
So I think we should have hit property early on as a sector. We were doing all the sectors. One of the issues is, and this is where I think it's a very important point to stress the fintech, we spoke about some of the challenges of the banks, but the fintech is not there to replace banks. Fintech is synergistic to banks. And again, if you look at, I use Europe just because it's got a very rich kind of ecosystem to look at. Once fintech started moving forward, the banks initially were like, these are competitors, right? Then the banks started working with fintechs, and actually, no, these guys can do a lot of work for us. Yes. They can do the origination, and then we can provide a lot of the platform. We work with a number of banks in the UAE, and they're really good partners.
Yes.
And they're getting better all the time, and we're building stuff together, right? And if you want to look at the pinnacle of that, look at someone like a JP Morgan, right? JP Morgan's excels across multiple sectors, but it's got a huge fintech division. And it just goes from strength to strength, and globally it's become an absolute powerhouse, right? Evidenced by its new castle it just built in Manhattan. The same can be said true here. And one of the things we were struggling was on the property side was checks, especially managers' checks, are still a major factor in the UAE market. I don't think they will be there forever, and I think respectfully, I think it's probably time we move on from checks. But that was something we needed. We can't issue a check. We're an EMI. We need to work with the bank to do so. And so over this year, we just got a new partnership with a new bank on that front. And that, again, with the IBANs, not just in the corporate, but both for the kind of individual IBANs, took it to the kind of next pain point, because now we could solve everything. We already had very good cross-border payments. We already had a good platform to use. We can onboard individual or corporate customers very quickly for transactions. And real estate things move fast. One of the big pain points within that, of course, is non-residents. How many international investors are investing in property? A huge amount, from India, from China, from the UK, totally. From Saudi, from Russia. So there needs to be a huge there needs to be a solution where you can open an account for someone very quickly, but you can still do the key products around checks, which are critical for property. So that again came together just coincidentally at the same time about a couple of months ago. Since then, we have been moving rapidly. We've now signed with pretty much every major real estate broker in the UAE.
Amazing. So practically, how does that look like? For example, if I'm a non-resident, let's say I'm from India,
sure,
I'd like to purchase a property, I've identified everything, I'm a non-resident, I want to pay. So where does Hubpay fit into this?
So I think there's 2 pain points there. Pain point one is, let's say you're a non-resident from anywhere. You need to have a local IBAN so you can send across dirhams and have those dirhams in that account and then issue a check from that account.
Correct.
We can do that. I'll be the fastest one to do that in the market. That's the first point. The second component is, and this is unique to India, if you're in India, there are challenges around bank transfers. And so what we've seen historically, India is the largest foreign investor country into property in the UAE. Number 2 is China. Both of them have challenges around bank payments. But in India, there is not a restriction around stablecoin. And so what we've built is payment links. We already have payment links for card and for bank transfer. That so if you have your business here, you send a payment link out. You can do a mass payment link to a whole load of individual customers internationally, or indeed you can do that for businesses, and they can then click on the payment link and do a bank transfer, a card. We've now added stablecoin or any cryptocurrency on that as well. So we send out a payment link internationally, and so if you're in, let's say, Mumbai, you can go, well, there's the property. It's on for 1.3 million dirhams. I have the equivalent in USDT. I send that through. We convert it with our licensed partner into dirhams, and then we pay out dirhams to the property developer here in the UAE.
I thought this discussion could go on for on and on, but
yeah.
I think we are coming to a close for this discussion, Kevin. And on that note, Kevin, just briefly, I mean, how do you see the future of Hubpay from now on to, let's say, the next 3 or 5 years? Now, you're also recognized on the Future 100 Companies list at the UAE, which is, again, not a small feat. So how do you see the future of Hubpay? Where are you heading?
Well, Hubpay was a business founded in the UAE. The UAE will be its HQ and its base as long as I'm in charge, which hopefully will be for quite some time. We think the last 2 years have been tough, and there is some of the challenges we spoke about that earlier on. We hit the kind of inflection point ourselves as a corporate a few months ago. We've never had the kind of growth. We've never had the product strength we've had that we're experiencing now. We've never had such a low customer acquisition cost. And so we're onboarding rapidly. We're growing kind of rapidly. We will cross the critical Rubicon of profitability in Q4, which will take us from a startup into a scale-up. And off the back of that, we'll be doing our Series B in Q1 next year. And then that'll mark the point when we go into new markets. So that's what we're really looking forward to. Startup period can be some fun, but it's also a lot of sleepless nights. And we're very positive of becoming the kind of leading fintech in the payments in the UAE. That goes to Series B next year.
Wonderful. For somebody like me whose roots are deep into finance, of course, it always gives me a very positive vibe when somebody says we're headed to profitability, which you are. So congrats on that. It's not an easy thing to come out on the other side of profitability.
No,
especially
absolutely.
if you're a startup. Cool. So what I do at the end of the session is, Kevin, I would have a rapid fire round,
Sure.
and a fun thing just
Sure.
to end up the discussion. So what happens is that these are crisp questions. I expect crisp responses. So happy to?
Shoot.
All right, cool. What is that one fintech buzzword that you secretly can't stand?
Good one to stump me on. Give me a next pass. I'm going to pass. You want to keep it fast?
worries.
Go.
One thing that you wish regulators understood better about fintech, and regulators could be anywhere, not just.
I'd say the stablecoin is
Stablecoin.
clear. Yeah.
Cool. The hardest lessons that you've learned as a founder.
Managing burn.
What's a payment innovation you think will mainstream in 10 years?
Stablecoin.
The biggest myth about crypto payments today.
That you can't do money laundering. Let me rephrase that. That you can't find out identity or complete proper email checks.
Cool. Wonderful. That was good, Kevin. Thank you very much again for taking out time for this. If you have a sentence or two, anything that you want to speak to the audience about, feel free to.
No, so I think you covered it very well. I think my final checkout would be I'd be remiss if my sales team would be angry if I didn't say so. But if you've got a business in the UAE, you're looking to get started, get going on your international payments, Hubpay is the best option. We'll onboard you very quickly. We're going to give you the best service, and we're building new products all the time. We'd love to have you as a customer.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to a close of today's podcast. Kevin is quite active on LinkedIn. I encourage you to go check out his profile, Hubpay's profile, their website, and see what you can do with them. Until next time, have a good one. See you.